The Carolina Panthers showed signs of life late in 2024 under Dave Canales and Bryce Young. What does 2025 look like? We're breaking down the Panthers today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who never miss a single episode, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins.
Joe, happy National Spotlight for the team whose colors most similarly parallel the colors of our show branding day to you here on the program.
You know what? That's a great call. Would you say that? Is it more Lions though? Are we more Lions than we are Panthers colors?
Lions
we had no choice.
Lions have no black, right?
Are you sure? Isn't that like their whole alternate gig?
They're alternate, but their logo and their original color brand set is white, silver, and Honolulu blue.
Yeah, you might be right about this. And by the way, we had no say over this. One day they gave us a graphics package.
Said, hey,
and this is it.
There you go. I said, it looks good to me. I like blue. It's fine.
Yeah.
I know Joe likes blue.
I certainly do. I like living in Charlotte where the Carolina Panthers play their home football games.
Ooh, good segue.
Keep pounding. Yeah, keep pounding.
Back on the tracks here with our roster spotlight for the Carolina Panthers. Been a busy team in free agency this offseason and last offseason too, when you consider their spending in year one of Dave Canales. And we're looking at the roster, looking at skill players, the trenches, the back seven. We're putting all the players in buckets like roster cornerstones, quality starters, sufficient level starters, quality depth, incomplete evaluations, rookies, non-roster caliber players, practice squad caliber players. Did I say replacement level players?
I'm not sure.
And replacement level players if I didn't already include that one. There's numerical values associated. There's positional weights that are associated. When we get to the end of the rainbow here in a week and a half, we'll be able to have position and roster power rankings for the entirety of the league for as we see it right now.
We start the conversation with the offensive skill players around Bryce Young and some exciting young players here with a top 10 investment in Tet McMillan, who obviously was a player Bryce Young wanted. They've been spending time together, gives them a guy that profiles as a guy that can be a number one to go with last year's first round pick and Xavier Legette. And not a lot of efficiency to Xavier Legette, but I think there's a unique skill set there that can complement Tet, where I think Tet can win more as a route runner and a leverage battle winner. And Xavier Legette on runaway routes, yards after catch, given some speed down the field, I think he can help this team. But, for as much as Xavier Legette was the top pick at receiver last year, Jalen Coker came on down the stretch, very productive player, despite not really being involved until week 5-ish, somewhere in that range. And the efficiency that Bryce Young had throwing the ball to Coker was pretty exciting, especially compared to Legette. And I'm not sleeping on Adam Thielen. I know he's getting older. He missed some time last year, but he came back and the dude was productive. And I think he's got a good relationship with Bryce Young and made some unbelievable catches down the stretch for this team. I know that he's not vintage Adam Thielen, but I think he can be a meaningful part of this wide receiver equation. Oh, by the way, Hunter Renfrow is part of this mix, and I have no idea what to expect. He's been gone for a little bit, but I think at one point you probably felt good about him as a slot receiver. He's not that old. Can he come in and provide some route running and more stability around Bryce Young? So an interesting mix of veterans and young players, but it's really the young players. It's McMillan, it's Legette, it's Coker that'll define the ceiling of this receiver core around Bryce Young.
And then a twitchy, undersized rookie on day 3 as well, and Jimmy Horn.
Yeah.
Does a very different skill set than the T-Max and the Legettes and the Thielens and the Coke, even like Coker at a Holy Cross, like a 42.5-inch vert. He just happened to run like 4.6.
Yeah.
Drafted out of Holy Cross. But you mentioned the chemistry that exists there. And I think Renfrow, this is a great team to kind of take the dice roll on Renfrow at this stage in his career and see if it comes up aces as a guy who runs great routes. It's a question of, I think for Renfrow, getting the timing similar to the timing that Thielen very clearly has with Bryce, right? Because as route guys that will route you up, it's less about putting it in your real estate or taking shots down the field within the timing of the drop. It's your progression being timed with optimizing where you're uncovering within the progression. So I wouldn't dismiss Hunter Renfrow. I think it's a great story. The problem with the scoring methodology that we have, though, Joe, is this is not a group that's going to be very well represented based off definitive proof of concept of what they are in the NFL. Right? It's Thielen I have as a sufficient level starter still.
Same.
Legette I have as an incomplete evaluation.
Same.
He's a first-round pick from last year. T-Mac is a rookie. We don't know. It's a rookie, right? It's a net zero. It's not going to help you. It's not going to hurt you. Same for Jimmy Horn. Hunter Renfrow, I had no choice but to put as an incomplete evaluation because we hadn't seen him.
Right.
And now you're into Jalen Coker, who's really promising, but had a smaller sample size. He's an incomplete evaluation for me. And now you're into like the David Moores and the Dan Chisenas of the depth chart at wide receiver.
Well, unfortunately, no Jonathan Brooks, right? Nice looking
sucks.
player out of Texas, injured again. But this is still a running back room that has 2 1,000-yard rushers from last season. Is there any other team in the league that can say they have that? And Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle. And I think Chuba's been a really fun story as a guy coming out of Oklahoma State. I didn't think much of what he'd do in the NFL, but I think for this team, the leadership, the consistency that he's provided, some toughness as well, some breakaway runs, I think he's really mattered for this type of team that's been looking for foundational pieces of the roster. I think Chuba's provided that. And, Rico Dowdle's not going to blow you away with his dynamic ability, but he is a no-nonsense runner that's going to get downhill. He's physical. He can catch the ball a little bit. I think that's a pretty good 1-2 punch, especially when you're looking at a room that was hoping to have Jonathan Brooks. I think it's a good running back situation.
Yeah. And Chuba, too, that style of runner behind this offensive line with the Dave Canales ideology of we'll take incremental gains to avoid detrimental long and late downs, right? This guy's going to fall forward. He's a dense runner. He's a tough runner, like you said. I had Chuba as a sufficient level starter. Personally, I had Rico Dowdle, ideally quality depth. He obviously had good production last year.
Yeah.
So I don't know where you came in on those two guys. I like Trevor Etienne coming out. I had him as a fringe top 100 player, had him as an early day 3 grade. So I think they got good value there. And I think he can he's not going to be explosive like you would hope Brooks would have been if he was healthy. But I think relative to Dowdle and Hubbard, there is a chance for a little bit of extra twitch in his game.
Yeah, I had Dowdle as a quality depth. I had Hubbard as a sufficient level starter.
Okay, so we're on the same page there.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Dowdle sounds such a small deal with Carolina. I think the league told us that, hey, we know he had 1,000 yards, but he's more of a complimentary player than a leading piece of a backfield. At tight end, Tommy Tremble's got this new 2-year, $10.25 million deal.
Handsome.
Yeah, well, it's not because he's been a dynamic receiver, right? He has his moments where he gets the ball and he starts running people over, but it's what he provides on an inline capacity. But I think that's okay because you have Jatavion Sanders, who does give you the more complete receiving profile that I think can be a creative player for this offense to move him around and take advantage of some mismatches that he can provide. And then Mitchell Evans as a draft pick, I think, is a great option for a third tight end. I think a guy that has an all-around skill set that maybe has some ceiling as well to develop.
Can I say, if I may, I cannot remember a tight end room, with all due respect, that's achieved less that I've liked more. Does that make sense?
that's a really interesting way to put it, but I get what you're saying for sure.
I like Tremble coming out. The potential was there, never really been the receiving profile, and Sanders, I mean, he had 30-plus catches last year. He had, some reasonable run. I mean, from a snaps count perspective, he played over 500 snaps as a rookie, but it's not like, wow, like we're really banking on Jatavion Sanders to be the receiving tight end of the group. I liked Mitchell Evans. I think he's got some dual threat ability as an inline player and also a guy that kind of sneakily flexed out at Notre Dame. This group, I had Tremble as honestly, I had him as a quality depth player because I don't see every down and passing down value. Sanders is an incomplete evaluation, and Mitchell Evans is obviously a rookie.
Had it exactly the same.
Great. Well, going to get in the trenches next.
We are. And a lot of continuity here with the O-line, a lot of transition with the D-line. We'll break it down for you here next. Be sure to stick with us. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball, under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting. You're already following all the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. I think on Tuesdays, it's Dinger Tuesdays. You can go in there and get a profit boost. If you pick someone to hit a home run. Yeah,
Dinger
man, I'm
Tuesdays.
Dinger Tuesdays, brother. I always find the little Pete Alonso, maybe a little Aaron Judge. You can find somebody you think will hit a long ball. And football futures bets are happening, and they got some interesting stuff for the Carolina Panthers. You can get Bryce Young, the over-under for his passing yards, 3,150.5. You think he's going to do more than that? Go smash the over. How about this one? You think Carolina's ready for a 9-win season? If they do, you can get the over at 8.5. You can get that at plus 200 right now. So some nice odds to check out for the Carolina Panthers. And folks, if you're new to FanDuel, it's a great time to sign up. New customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. So open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com/lockedon for you to get started.
Projected starting five. Actually, I don't think there's really a need for projection with this.
I don't know. I think center might be open, Kyle. I think center might. Yeah, I think so. I think they like Cade Mays a little bit with Austin Corbett. I think it'd be a good competition.
That's Cade Mays. I like him coming out.
Yeah. Don't sleep on it.
Sometimes these guys just take a couple years. Right? A little marinade, right? And it certainly doesn't help when you're playing between two well-compensated guards, potentially, where you have Ike Ekwonu at left tackle as a top 10 draft pick. Damian Lewis, they signed in free agency. I think that was $13.5 million per season average last offseason. Cade Mays / Austin Corbett at the center spot. Robert Hunt got the handsome $20 million per year contract last offseason as well. Taylor Moton, contract year for Moton, right?
Yeah, this guy's unbelievable. He's one of the most consistent players in the entire league that nobody talks about.
And then you get the non-starter between Mays and Corbett. You get Brady Christensen. You get Yash Neisman. Chandler Savala is a 4th-round pick from 2 years ago. We got some depth to go with, I think, a pretty high floor across-the-board projected starting five.
Yeah, I like it a lot. And I think Icky's still coming into his own. I think Robert Hunt in year 2 will be better for this team. I think it's a big transition from the passing game perspective, coming away from Miami and into this offense where I think you saw his pressure numbers were way up. Still a good run blocking player, but I think he'll stabilize a little bit more this year. And obviously, I mean, Taylor Moton's just been so consistent for a long time. I think you know exactly what you're getting. And good depth in Neisman, Mays, Christensen they brought back on a 1 year, a little over $2 million to come in. He could play multiple spots for this group. So this is a team that it felt like for years we talked O-line and concerns, and we're not. And they've certainly had a lot invested here to get that to the point where it's not a concern. But I think that's a big part of this overall equation with Bryce Young in year 3 and a lot of young skill players. We got a group up front that we can trust. I think that's a big part of where they can go offensively.
Yeah, I think names like Aaron Banks and even Trey Smith, these guys owe at least a thank you card to Carolina for what hand they played in the evolving market for offensive guard play in the NFL. Because they hired Canales and they said, look, we want We want to be a mash the football type of team. Let's go get some guys that we can mash the football with. And they paid handsomely for this group. And I think by and large, you feel like it paid dividends as far as what the identity of this group now looks like and how seriously they took their investments up front. And I think the tackle conversation will be interesting long-term, where obviously Icky has not been the most consistent player year to year. Taylor Moton, as we mentioned, is a long tenured player, but at the cost and the longevity of that forecast, what does that look like? But at least they have this interior trio where they have names that, and two of them are on long-term deals at the guard spots for a quarterback in Bryce Young, who I think is probably would benefit as much as any quarterback in the league from having the depth of the pocket inside. Be very stout to give him room to operate because of his stature.
I have Ekwonu, Lewis, Corbett as sufficient starters. I have Hunt and Moton as quality starters. I have Nijman, Mays, and Christensen as quality depth. I think that's going to score really well for us. Maybe you have some differences, but I guess they'd be minor.
I have it exactly the same.
All right. We talk about investments in the O-line. That's also true for the D-line, where obviously I think the story with the D-line is the return of Derrick Brown and what his health is going to be and the impact that he can make, because he was obviously coming into his own, gets a big deal and gets hurt, week 1 last year. And obviously that defense was historically bad, and it doesn't hurt that your best player gets injured in week 1. But then they went out, they paid.
Slander.
Wow. Congratulations on having a healthy season, Jaycee Horn. You looked really good too. But they've spent here, right? Bobby Brown, a player. I think the best thing we could tell you about Bobby Brown is that Kyle and I both wanted our respected teams to sign him in free agency. We wanted him badly. I think he's going to be a nice addition. They paid Tershawn Wharton a good amount of money to leave Kansas City. Patrick Jones got a decent little bag. DJ Wanham last year got a little bag. Shy Tuttle a couple years ago got a little bag. And they got some players here that they're paying, and it needs to come together. I think the piece of this pie, like I said, is Derrick Brown and what he's going to add to this team. But then it's some young players off the edge. They move on from Clowney. And whether it's Nick Scorton, who they traded up for in the 2nd round, or Prince Umanmielen, the 3rd-round pick, DJ Johnson was a fairly high pick a couple years ago as well. I think Jones and Wanham kind of set the floor for the edge, but the ceiling comes from Umanmielen and Scorton. So I think there's a lot of potential here for this group. A lot of new pieces that need to come together, a lot of guys that need to take a step, young players returning from injury, all of that. But I think this is a lot healthier than it was last year.
Yeah, I think the individual parts score pretty well for me. I think the thing with Carolina is there's so much new that it's more of a chemistry experiment than it is a talent question for me with this group on how it all comes together, because like Bobby Brown that's a mean dude. Like he's a really stout, really heavy-handed player, and he's on the depth chart at nose, but he played in B gap, he played 4I, he played 3 tech sometimes. I mean, he can play up and down the line a little bit. Tershawn Wharton obviously is the penetration style player. They drafted Cam Jackson as a developmental type, who's a big body type of player. Could probably learn a lot from Ashawn Robinsons of the world and the Bobby Browns of the world as far as point of attack play and consistency there. You mentioned the young guys on the edge, and I like Patrick Jones. I think Patrick Jones is ideally probably a 500, 600 snap player that you get long and late downs. He might be the guy that comes off the field for Princely and or kicks inside. If you take Bobby Brown off the field and it's Derrick Brown, you could get some exotic fronts that have Derrick Brown, let me specify, Tershawn Wharton, Patrick Jones, Princely, whether it's Wanham or Scorton that spells him. I think they've got a lot of exotic front potential with this group, and Patrick Jones, I think is a sneaky good add to pair with Wanham as like high floor players.
Scoring it was a little tricky. I have Derrick Brown as a quality starter. I have Bobby Brown as sufficient, but I think the arrow is pointing up there.
Yes.
I have DJ Wanham as sufficient. And then between Patrick Jones, Shai Tuttle, Deshaun Wharton, A'Shaun Robinson, LeBron Ray, I have them all as quality depth.
Okay. Yeah. But with opportunities to move up because they're getting elevated roles in Carolina versus what they had in their previous spots.
I think that's a great way to put at it. Way more opportunity. And we talk about like 4 players. If 2 or 3 of them wind up really taking that step, I think it's going to be huge for this defense.
Yep.
All right, back 7 on defense. Boy, we've got some moving parts here. We'll break that down for you here next. Be sure to stick with us. Linebacker, Josey Jewell, and Trevor Wallace in year 2. That's going to be a big part of this equation, I think. Right? I mean, Christian Roseboom comes over. I don't think much of him. I think he's more of a snap taker, depth player. But Josey Jewell, I think, sets a floor as a Mike backer, and then Trevor Wallace is an investment. They must feel pretty good about it because
he played almost 600 snaps last year.
Right. And I mean, the only thing they really did was bring in Christian Roseboom. There's not a whole lot else. I think they got a year with Trevor Wallace and must have felt good about what he can be as Josey Jewell's running mate.
Me on the outside looking in, I think Wallace is a skill-specific kind of player. He's obviously got a very explosive linear athletic profile, and he's a pretty dense player. They were a team that I would have liked to have seen like take a swing at a Jermaine Pratt, like when Pratt gets cut and shakes loose. I think that would have been a really exciting ad for them to go as kind of the platoon player where you want to get into base and you want the run stuffer. I think Wallace can do that. And I know he tested really rangy as far as like the explosiveness and the speed, but I think just the play in space, I think Pratt's background would have been a really nice foil for them. So that's kind of the question that I have with this group, and maybe they're able to disperse that concern with some of the ads at safety. But I think at the very least, you've got a high intellect player in Jewell. You've got a really straight line, explosive, dense physical player in Wallace. Roseboom's kind of dabbled with elevated playing time. Beyond that, I think you're looking at special teams type guys for them. And if the safeties hit, you can make it work.
I think the safeties are an important part of their defensive equation, especially when you look at their slot options. Cho, Smith, Wade, MJ Devonshire. You don't know much about either player, and neither is a particularly high pedigree investment. And so this is another team, and we've been through plenty of teams like this where you don't necessarily see the true traditional slot player, but you do see some depth at safety. Trayvon Moehrig, obviously a big free agent signing. I think that's a great move for them. Damani Richardson looks like he's going to be their running mate as a player that kind of got overlooked in the draft process and got a chance to play, and looks like he's going to start. But then Lathan Ransom, Nick Scott are guys that I think can be sub-package players, guys that can help them go 3 safeties, help them go big nickel. I think Ransom might even be able to play a little bit on the second level. I think that's kind of where they fill in the blanks with some of the concerns we might have at linebacker.
Trayvon Moehrig and Lathan Ransom as a couple of guys in the same safety room, as a guy who pounded the table this offseason in late February and early March for both guys. We're pulling at some heartstrings here because it was Damian Lewis was who I wanted to replace Robert Hunt if you couldn't get Robert Hunt on a contract, and they signed them both. And then it's, you got to need a defensive tackle? Give me Bobby Brown. Carolina says, yoink, we'll take that too. Oh, you thought Trayvon Moehrig was the best safety on the market? We'll sign him. And your favorite safety prospect outside of the first round was Lathan Ransom. We'll draft him in the early day 3 range as well. So Carolina going after a couple brand guys here the last 15 months. And I'm getting a little envy. I'm getting a little green with envy, even though, Moehrig's a new piece, got handsomely compensated. Ransom's a rookie, so we don't know. I like the makeup of the safety room quite a bit, needless to say.
How about corner? Jaycee Horn was healthy last year. He got paid. And I think every time Jaycee Horn's been healthy, he's been really, really good. Yeah. It's good to see that really happen last year. I think he's got type of ability to be one of the best corners in the league. I have him as a quality starter. And then Mike Jackson kind of emerged for them. They had signed Dane Jackson to be the starter, and Dane got injured. Bills legend and back to being a Bills legend.
Legend.
Right back where the Lord has intended him to be, right? But Mike Jackson kind of emerged through that. He had a, big 1 year, I think, in Seattle as a starter. And then, they extended him, right? A 2-year, $12 million deal, if I'm not mistaken, to be that running mate. And there's not a whole lot of depth outside. I mean, Caleb Evans really hasn't proven much in his career. Shamar Bartholomew, low pedigree type player. So they're counting on Mike Jackson to replicate, and they're counting on Jaycee Horn to stay healthy, because I don't think there's much in the way of depth here at outside corner.
Yeah, if Jaycee Horn has significant injury issues this year, I think this group could be a big-time Achilles heel for them. Tell me why this team shouldn't be into one of the available veteran corners.
Well, the problem is that we've said that for too many teams now, right?
Right.
Like
but here's the thing, and I don't disagree with you. When Jair Alexander signs for 1 year, 4 with $2 million in incentives, he didn't do anybody any favors for what they're going to be able to ask for teams.
You think that Jair had the best argument to get paid the most of the available options?
Yeah,
he took that.
And,
okay,
and he took less.
Yeah,
it was reported that he took less, and that's fine. Like, you don't know what he offered, but if Jair's going to take that, I don't know what leg Rasul Douglas or Stephon Gilmore have to stand on to really pound the table for a $7 million deal when Jair took 4 as the base, up to 6.
Both of those players have been on the Panthers before as well.
Right. So, I think they should also be a team that considers the Jalen Ramsey stuff. Ramsey had some very complimentary things to say about Ejiro Evero. So
I'd be stunned.
I'd be stunned too.
If this is the Jair team, I'd be pretty stunned.
They should think about it though, because you got done talking about we're riding on Chow Smith-Wade in the nickel. We don't really have depth established, and you've got a player with some injury questions in Jaycee Horn, and you got Mike Jackson as an emerging player, and no depth. You could put Ramsey all over the place in this back seven, and Evero could make that happen.
Does he want to play all over the place? Does he want to go to Carolina?
Doesn't matter if he's under contract.
Well, he's under contract with the Dolphins. He might as well just play for the Dolphins then. They have a huge need at corner.
Yeah, but the Dolphins don't want players that don't want to be there.
Well, I don't understand why he would want to be in Carolina more than Miami.
He had nice things to say about Ejiro Evero. So if that's the case and he really respects him, then maybe he can go play there. I don't know.
That headline comes through. I'll fondly remember this
I don't predictably think that it will, but I'm saying the Panthers should think about it with the dynamics of their cornerback room and how Ramsey, I think, could uniquely give them an upgrade over Mike Jackson, where Mike Jackson becomes a very valuable depth player in that regard. Or alternatively, you can play Ramsey as the nickel and have Jackson, Horn, and Ramsey all on the field at the same time. And then you really alleviate your linebacker stress too.
So for a defense that had all the questions in the world last year, we still have some. But I think the front's better, and I think that's where you should definitely get excited. I mean, obviously, Tre'von Moehrig is a huge addition at safety. I have questions about linebacker. I have questions about the slot. Corner depth. I think there's some things that need to come together.
Yeah, Rome wasn't built in a day, but I look at this group and I feel much better about it than what I did last year.
Tend to agree.
And I think the youth movement that's happening in place of that, whether that is free agents that they signed or that's players that they've drafted in the last 2 years, they should feel pretty good about having some pieces, and it's kind of that exciting window where, year 2 of Canales, you get a chance to maybe feel it out a little bit, and then maybe a big leap happens. And if Bryce Young takes a leap, and we didn't really talk about the quarterback room because quarterbacks are their own separate thing for this process, you could be an upstart team this year, and then you could be looking at next year and get really excited about what it can look like. But these guys got to go out and do it, and there's a lot of new that has to come together for that to obviously happen.
It's Carolina Panthers 5-12 last year. Year 1 under Canales. We can improve on that, right? Better than 5 wins.
We got a couple minutes.
Take a quick peek.
Want to do the thing?
Quick peek. Who do they start with? Carolina Panthers week 1. What's that game?
All right. So their 2025 schedule. They start at Jacksonville and at Arizona the first 2 weeks.
Really? Two in a row on the road.
3 of the first 4 on the road.
Jeez.
They play one home game before October 5th.
What's up with that? Is it the soccer team taking up the stadium? What's going on?
know.
Did Tepper get too many concerts on the docket? What's going on here?
They got 2 home preseason games though, so they're
big dubs. Okay, so you said Arizona, Jackson. What's the first 4? Arizona, Jacksonville.
It's at Jacksonville, at Arizona, home against Atlanta, and then at New England.
You think you win 2 of those, maybe, right?
Think we get 2?
I think you at least get 1.
Want to say 1.5?
1.5.
Okay, then they're home against Miami, home against Dallas, the next 2.
I don't know. Probably not.
At Jets, home against the Bills.
Can we put us at collectively 2.5 wins here? Just throughout that entire stretch?
Yeah, throughout that entire stretch. So we're at 2.5. At Green Bay.
Don't like it.
Home against New Orleans.
Yeah.
3.5.
Let's go.
Okay, then 3 games before the bye, it's at Atlanta, at San Francisco, home against the Rams.
I don't love that.
Want to give them a half a win there?
Let's get to 4.
So we're at 4. 4 with 4 to play. At New Orleans.
Okay, out of the bye?
Oh, dude, we said yesterday we were going to split with it. These 2 teams are going to
Can't give it to them. Yeah, we can't give it to them.
Home against Tampa, home against Seattle, at Tampa to close.
That's not a great schedule.
This is not a good third place schedule.
No, that's pretty tough. That's pretty tough.
So you said you could get over 8.5 or plus, was it 200?
Plus 200.
Man, if you get that, send us a screenshot of the slip.
Well,
we want to know who's real believers in keep pounding here.
I hate to totally tank this conversation, but I'm going to. You can get the under on 4.5 wins at plus 360. So maybe you're not buying this. You can get the under on 6.5 wins at plus 120 on FanDuel.
See, that speaks to me a little bit more. 4 is pretty lean number.
That's like under on 6.5 at plus 120 feels okay. But I mean, obviously, Bryce Young showed great growth at the end of last season. He parlays that in. This defense gets better. I think obviously they can win a whole lot more than
it's Bryce and the emergence of the weapons to allow you to play complementary game scripts.
Yeah.
So there you have it. There's the Carolina Panthers. Tomorrow is the Atlanta Falcons. Thursday is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then Friday's Takes on Take. So that is going to be our schedule for the week. We hope you will come back and see us again. Kyle Crabbs, Joe Marino. Keep it locked in. You're on Locked On NFL Scouting. We're out of here.